In the year of our Lord 1349, as the shadow of the Black Death crept across Europe, St. Benedict's Abbey stood as a lonely sentinel against the encroaching darkness. Stone walls, weathered by centuries of prayer and toil, offered a fragile sanctuary from the pestilence that devoured the world beyond. News had reached the abbey, carried by weary travelers and whispered on the wind. The plague, a scythe of death, was cutting a swathe through villages and cities alike. Father Thomas, abbot of St. Benedict's, wrestled with the weight of this knowledge, his heart heavy with the responsibility for the souls under his care. Away from the somber atmosphere of the scriptorium, Brother Alastair sought solace in the embrace of the abbey gardens. Here, amidst the fragrant herbs and vibrant blooms, he found a connection to the natural world that transcended the fear and uncertainty of the times. He believed that within these plants lay not only remedies for physical ailments, but also a deeper understanding of the rhythms of life and death. He studied their forms, their scents, their reactions to the sun and rain, seeking to unlock their secrets. Sister Agnes, a young novice with a thirst for knowledge, often watched Brother Alastair from afar, intrigued by his unconventional approach to healing and his deep connection to the natural world. She found herself drawn to his quiet dedication and the sense of peace he seemed to find amongst the plants. As the plague drew closer, the monks intensified their prayers, seeking divine intervention to protect them from the pestilence. But even within the sacred walls of the chapel, doubt and fear began to fester, eroding the foundations of their faith. While the other monks sought solace in prayer, Brother Alastair turned to his own unique form of communion. He believed that music, like the language of plants, held a hidden power, a key to understanding the mysteries of creation. He experimented with different frequencies and melodies, convinced that certain tones could stimulate growth, enhance healing, or even unlock the hidden properties of the herbs he cultivated. Father Thomas, troubled by Alastair's unorthodox practices, watched him with a mixture of concern and disapproval. He questioned the wisdom of abandoning traditional prayers for what he perceived as strange and potentially heretical experiments. The relentless advance of the plague cast a long shadow over St. Benedict's, fueling fear and suspicion amongst the monks. Each new report of devastation brought them closer to the abyss. "Brother Alastair," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "may I ask you about your work? I've noticed you, playing music for the plants." Alastair paused, considering her question. Perhaps, he thought, this young novice was the open mind he needed, someone who might see the world not just through the lens of faith, but also with the eyes of observation and inquiry. He knew that what he was doing was unusual, perhaps even foolish, but in these desperate times he clung to the hope that the language of nature might offer a path to salvation. The first sign came subtly, a fever dismissed as a chill from the autumn air. Brother Michael, a gentle soul who tended the abbey's livestock, complained of aches and a growing weariness. Father Thomas, burdened by the whispers of plague reaching even their isolated walls, offered him blessed wine and a prayer, hoping it was merely a passing ailment. By the next day there was no denying it. Brother Michael's fever raged, and grotesque swellings, buboes, had appeared under his arms. Brother Alastair, summoned from his garden, could only offer what little comfort he knew. He prepared a poultice of willow bark to ease the pain, his heart heavy with dread. News of Brother Michael's condition spread like wildfire through the abbey. Fear, a cold and unwelcome guest, settled in the hearts of the monks. Sister Agnes, her youthful faith shaken, sought refuge in the chapel, her whispered prayers barely audible above the rising tide of panic. Father Thomas, his face a mask of forced calm, gathered the monks in the refectory. He spoke of faith and resilience, of God's unwavering presence even in the darkest of times. He urged them to remain steadfast in their vows, to support one another, and to pray for deliverance. While Father Thomas sought to bolster their spirits with words, Brother Alastair turned to the earth for answers. He worked tirelessly in his garden, gathering herbs known for their healing properties, driven by a desperate hope to find something, anything, that could offer a defense against the encroaching pestilence. But the plague was relentless. Brother Michael's suffering intensified, his body consumed by fever and the agonizing pain of the buboes. He cried out in delirium, his pleas for mercy echoing through the silent abbey. 3 days after the first symptoms appeared, Brother Michael succumbed to the plague. Father Thomas, his face etched with grief, administered the last rites, his voice cracking as he spoke the ancient words of absolution. The monks buried Brother Michael in the abbey's small graveyard, their faces pale and drawn. The solemnity of the occasion was overshadowed by the fear that gnawed at their hearts. They knew that this was only the beginning. That night Brother Alastair sought solace in his garden. He played a mournful tune on his flute, his music a lament for the fallen and a desperate plea for understanding. He hoped that somehow, in the language of the plants, he could find an answer to the plague's cruel riddle. The death of Brother Michael shattered the fragile peace of the abbey. Accusations and blame flew freely. Some monks questioned God's will, while others sought scapegoats, their faith buckling under the weight of despair. Father Thomas, his authority challenged, struggled to restore order. He reminded them of their vows of obedience and stability, but his words seemed to fall on deaf ears. The plague had unleashed a storm of fear that threatened to tear the abbey apart. Amidst the chaos and despair, Sister Agnes found herself drawn to Brother Alastair's quiet dedication. She saw in his unconventional methods a glimmer of hope, a willingness to seek answers beyond the confines of tradition. As the plague tightened its grip on St. Benedict's, she wondered if his connection to the natural world might offer them a path to survival. The autumn air grew colder, each gust of wind seeming to whisper tales of death and despair. Yet within the herbarium, Brother Alastair pressed on, fueled by a desperate hope. He believed the answer to the plague lay hidden within the herbs, waiting to be unlocked by the right frequency, the perfect harmony. Sister Agnes continued to be Alastair's steadfast companion, her sharp mind and keen observations proving invaluable. She documented every detail, every variation in the herb's response to his musical experiments, her charcoal pencil capturing the subtle nuances that might otherwise be missed. Not all within the abbey shared Alastair's optimism. Whispers of heresy and madness began to circulate. Some of the older monks, steeped in tradition, viewed his methods as a sacrilege, an affront to God's will. They saw his music not as a path to healing, but as a dangerous distraction from prayer. Father Thomas, caught between his duty to his flock and his own growing unease, found himself increasingly drawn to the abbey's ancient library. He sought answers within the wisdom of the past, hoping to find guidance in these dark and uncertain times. Day after day, Alastair continued his experiments. He focused his efforts on feverfew, knowing its historical use in treating fevers. He played simple, repetitive melodies, carefully noting any changes in the plant's appearance or aroma. A glimmer of hope appeared when 3 monks, treated with a poultice made from feverfew exposed to Alastair's music, showed signs of improvement. Their fevers subsided slightly, and their breathing became less labored. It was a small victory, but in the face of so much death, it felt like a miracle. Despite the small success, Alistair remained humble. He knew that the plague was a formidable foe, and that his efforts might ultimately be in vain. He prayed for guidance, for strength, and for the wisdom to understand the secrets of the natural world. Sister Agnes, emboldened by the monk's improvement, sought out Father Thomas. She spoke of Alistair's dedication, of his unwavering belief in the power of nature, and of the potential for his methods to offer solace and perhaps even a cure. Father Thomas listened patiently, weighing Agnes' words against his own doubts and fears. He knew that any deviation from tradition would be met with resistance, but he also recognized the desperation of their situation. He was caught between the old ways and the glimmer of a new hope. That evening, Father Thomas sought out Alistair. He found him in the chapel, his music filling the silent space with a strange, ethereal beauty. It was a melody of hope, a symphony of silence in the shadow of the plague. Father Thomas approached Alistair, his heart filled with a newfound respect. He saw not heresy, but a desperate attempt to find solace and healing in a world consumed by death. He realized that faith and reason were not mutually exclusive, but rather two sides of the same coin. As the first rays of dawn painted the stained glass windows with vibrant colors, Father Thomas made a decision. He would support Alistair's work, not as a replacement for faith, but as a complement to it. For in the face of death, any glimmer of hope, no matter how unconventional, was worth pursuing. The symphony of hope had begun. The weight of his office pressed heavily upon Father Thomas. Each cough, each fevered brow, was a hammer blow against his faith. He knelt, his prayers feeling hollow, unanswered by the silence above. Alistair's hands, usually steady and sure, trembled slightly. He crushed the herbs with unnecessary force, the familiar scents offering no comfort. Doubts, like weeds, began to choke his spirit. Agnes watched Brother John's labored breathing, the rasping sound a grim counterpoint to her silent prayers. The plague cared not for piety, nor for the healing arts. It simply consumed. The words caught in Father Thomas' throat as he announced Brother Peter's passing. The familiar routine of the refectory felt like a macabre stage play, the actors waiting for their cue to exit, never to return. The notes from Alistair's recorder were thin and reedy, a lament for the dying, a plea to the silent plants. He felt a growing disconnect, the music failing to bridge the gap between him and the natural world. Agnes watched Alistair, the music a tangible expression of his despair. She admired his dedication, but wondered if his search was leading him further from solace, not closer. "Brother Alistair," Father Thomas began, his voice echoing in the silent cloister, "some of the brothers question your experiments. They see them as a distraction from prayer, a turning away from God in our hour of need." Alistair met the abbot's gaze, his own filled with a weariness that transcended mere fatigue. "I only seek to understand, Father, to find a way to ease the suffering." Agnes, hidden in the shadows, felt a surge of protectiveness towards Alistair. She believed in his work, in his unconventional approach, but she also understood the abbot's dilemma. Alistair wrestled with his doubts. Had he been foolish? Had he allowed his curiosity to lead him astray? The silence of the herbs offered no answers, only the echo of his own failing hopes. Father Thomas, alone with his God, felt the foundations of his faith tremble. He yearned for a sign, a miracle, anything to alleviate the suffering of his flock and quell the growing despair within his own heart. Agnes entered the herbarium as dawn broke, bringing with her a sprig of rosemary and a quiet determination. "Brother Alistair," she said softly, "perhaps we are looking for the wrong answer. Perhaps the plants are not meant to cure us but to guide us." Days blurred into weeks, each sunrise a grim reminder of the Abbey's dwindling numbers. Yet, within the herbarium, Brother Alistair persisted, driven by a desperate hope he could barely articulate. Sister Agnes, a quiet observer, meticulously documented each experiment, her sharp eyes missing nothing. She saw patterns where Alistair only saw frustration. He played a simple melody, a series of high, trilling notes, directing the sound towards a cluster of feverfew. "Brother Alistair," Agnes said softly, her voice barely a whisper, "the plants closest to the flute, their leaves seem to reach higher, almost as if drawn to the sound." Alistair stopped playing, his gaze shifting from the feverfew to Agnes. He had been so focused on the notes themselves, he had missed the subtle changes. "And here with the foxglove," Agnes continued, tracing a delicate line in the air. "The stems closest to the lower notes, they seem thicker, not by much, but it is consistent." Alistair peered closer, his calloused fingers tracing the contours of the stems. He saw it now, the almost imperceptible difference that Agnes had spotted. Agnes meticulously recorded their findings, her charcoal pencil scratching across the parchment, translating observation into data. "It is not a cure, brother," she said softly, "but perhaps a key." Inspired, Alistair began to experiment with different frequencies, carefully logging each plant's reaction. He felt a renewed sense of purpose, a fragile hope blooming amidst the encroaching darkness. Father Thomas, observing from afar, felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in weeks, a hesitant belief that even in the face of death, life, in its own mysterious way, still sought to flourish. He looked at Agnes, a silent understanding passing between them. They were not healers, not saviors, but they were witnesses to the intricate dance of life, even in the heart of death's shadow. And in that shared understanding, in the quiet symphony of the herbarium, they found a small measure of solace. The symphony of silence had, at last, yielded a single, hopeful note. Father Thomas wrestled with his conscience. The plague tightened its grip, and the Abbey's traditional defenses, prayer and penance, seemed increasingly futile. Brother Alistair's unorthodox methods were unsettling, yet a desperate hope flickered within him. Inside the herbarium, Brother Alistair continued his experiments, seemingly oblivious to the abbot's gaze. He gently plucked the lute strings, sending vibrations through the air and into the soil where his herbs grew. He was looking for anything to help, any sign of how to fight the pestilence. Summoning his resolve, Father Thomas stepped into the herbarium. "Brother Alistair," he said, his voice echoing in the small space, "I will allow your experiments to continue, but under my direct supervision." Alistair's surprise was evident but quickly replaced by a cautious optimism. "Thank you, Father. I believe there is much we can learn." Days turned into weeks as Father Thomas observed Alistair's work. He watched the monk play simple melodies, meticulously recording the reactions of each plant. He didn't understand it, but he could not deny that something was happening. The plants seemed to respond, subtly shifting their leaves, growing fractions of an inch more than their counterparts. Sister Agnes, ever the diligent observer, continued to document Alistair's findings. Her notebooks filled with sketches and notes, a growing testament to the subtle power of music on the plant kingdom. One day, Father Thomas noticed a basil plant, usually vibrant and fragrant, drooping and withered. Alistair changed his tune, playing a faster, more energetic melody. To the abbot's astonishment, the plant seemed to perk up, its leaves regaining a semblance of life. Word of Alastair's experiments spread throughout the abbey. Some monks, clinging to traditional beliefs, viewed his actions as sacrilegious, a dangerous departure from the path of God. They whispered of heresy and divine punishment. Alastair felt the animosity, a palpable weight on his shoulders. Yet he pressed on, driven by a conviction that he was on the verge of a breakthrough, that the plants held a secret key to survival. Father Thomas, aware of the growing unrest, addressed the dissenting monks. "Have faith, brothers," he urged, "but do not close your minds to the possibility that God works in mysterious ways. We must explore every avenue, every potential solution, if we are to survive this plague." Sister Agnes, ever the optimist, saw in Father Thomas's words a glimmer of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, reason and faith could coexist, and together they could find a path through the darkness. Despite his public pronouncements, Father Thomas harbored his own doubts. He knelt in the chapel, seeking guidance from a God he wasn't sure was listening. He was leading his flock through uncharted territory, a journey fueled by hope and desperation. Alastair's experiments danced between promise and despair. Some herbs, bathed in the resonance of his carefully chosen tones, flourished with unnatural vigor. Others remained stubbornly resistant, indifferent to his efforts. Rosemary, once a symbol of remembrance, now mirrored the fading hopes within the abbey. Agnes, ever diligent, meticulously recorded each observation, charting the successes and failures with scientific precision. She noted a pattern. The herbs responding best were those known to alleviate fever and inflammation. But one vital ingredient, meadowsweet, essential for its salicylic acid, remained stubbornly absent. Meadowsweet. Alastair knew of a patch, nestled beside the Whispering Falls, a day's journey from the abbey. But venturing outside meant facing the plague's relentless advance, a risk that weighed heavily on his soul. "We must go, Brother Alastair," Agnes declared, her voice firm. "The meadowsweet could offer respite, perhaps even salvation. We cannot stand idly by while others suffer." Her words echoed Alastair's own desperate thoughts. Father Thomas listened to their plea, his face a mask of conflicted emotions. The risks were undeniable, but the potential reward. He knew the desperation gripping the abbey. Hope was a fragile thing, and he couldn't extinguish even its faintest flicker. With a heavy heart, Father Thomas granted his consent. He offered Alastair and Agnes his blessing, a silent prayer for their safety and success. The fate of many rested on their shoulders, a burden they carried with a mixture of fear and determination. They set off at dawn, the abbey gates closing behind them with a resounding thud. The forest, once a source of solace, now felt menacing, the rustling leaves whispering tales of death. Alastair led the way, his rosary beads clicking softly, a counterpoint to the ominous silence. They encountered signs of the plague's devastation along the way. Abandoned farms, their fields overgrown and desolate. Villages reduced to ghost towns, the silence broken only by the wind whistling through empty windows. The journey was a constant reminder of the stakes. Hunger gnawed at their bellies, and exhaustion weighed down their limbs. The once familiar landscape had become a hostile wilderness, teeming with dangers both seen and unseen. Even the animals seemed to carry the scent of death. Finally, they reached the Whispering Falls. The air was cooler here, the sound of rushing water a welcome reprieve from the oppressive silence. And there, nestled amongst the rocks, was meadowsweet, its delicate white flowers a beacon of hope in the encroaching darkness. Agnes carefully harvested the meadowsweet, her hands trembling with a mixture of relief and trepidation. Each blossom was a precious gift, a potential weapon against the relentless enemy. They gathered as much as they dared, knowing they had to return to the abbey before nightfall. The journey back was fraught with a new urgency. They knew the plague could be lurking anywhere, waiting to claim them. But they pressed on, driven by the hope that the price they had paid for this knowledge might yet save lives within the walls of St. Benedict's. The relentless toll of the plague had begun to wear even on Alistair's unwavering spirit. He had chased a cure, a panacea hidden within the leaves and roots he so diligently studied. But the herbs, despite their vibrant life, offered no complete reprieve, only fleeting moments of respite. Agnes found Alistair despondent. The hope she had nurtured alongside him seemed to dim, replaced by a somber acceptance of their limitations. Still, she refused to surrender completely to despair. "Brother," she began softly, "perhaps a cure is beyond our grasp, but comfort, relief, these are still within our reach." Alistair nodded slowly, the weight of his disappointment momentarily lifting. Chamomile, yes, for easing pain, for calming the fevered mind. He realized Agnes was right. Their efforts could still offer solace, even in the face of death. Father Thomas, though still steadfast in his faith, recognized the value of Alistair and Agnes's work. He spent hours researching remedies from forgotten texts, seeking any knowledge that might alleviate the suffering of his dwindling flock. He acknowledged that even prayer needed to be supplemented by action, by tangible comfort. The days that followed were marked by a shift in focus. Alistair and Agnes dedicated themselves to easing the pain and anxieties of the afflicted. Chamomile tea for sleepless nights, willow bark infusions for throbbing aches, lavender compresses for fevered heads, their efforts, though unable to halt the disease, offered moments of peace and dignity. The chapel, once a place of vibrant song and fervent prayer, now echoed with the hushed tones of lament. The monks, facing their mortality, found solace in the familiar rhythms of the liturgy, their voices blending in a fragile harmony of faith and acceptance. Agnes, despite her youth, displayed a remarkable strength. She sat vigil by the bedsides of the dying, offering a gentle touch, a comforting word, a silent presence. She learned to accept death not as an enemy but as a natural transition, a passage to the next life. Alistair returned to his plants, not seeking a cure but seeking solace. He played his flute, not to coax forth hidden properties but to offer a lament, a song of grief for the lives lost, a tribute to the enduring power of nature. His music was now a balm, not a scientific experiment. Father Thomas, weary but resolute, continued to lead his community. He found a new depth in his faith, a quiet strength born not of certainty, but of acceptance. He prayed not for deliverance, but for the grace to face whatever lay ahead with courage and compassion. The storm raged outside, mirroring the turmoil within the abbey walls. The plague continued its relentless course, claiming more lives, casting a long shadow over the remaining monks. Yet, amidst the darkness, a flicker of hope persisted, a quiet resilience, a shared commitment to easing suffering, a newfound appreciation for the fragility and beauty of life. In the quiet of the herbarium, Alistair and Agnes sat together, their silence filled with unspoken understanding. They had not found a miracle, but they had discovered something equally profound: the power of compassion, the resilience of the human spirit, and the enduring connection between humanity and the natural world. As the dawn broke, painting the sky with hues of gold and rose, a sense of quiet resignation settled over St. Benedict's. The plague had run its course, leaving behind a trail of sorrow and loss. But amidst the ruins, a seed of hope had been sown, a renewed appreciation for life, a deeper understanding of the natural world, and an unwavering commitment to compassion and healing. The silence that fell was not the silence of despair, but the silence of reflection, of remembrance, and of a quiet, enduring faith. The fever's relentless grip began to loosen. One by one, the moans that had haunted the Abbey's stone halls grew fainter, replaced by the fragile whispers of recovery. Father Thomas, weary but resolute, watched as the first rays of dawn pierced through the lingering darkness, painting the sky with hues of tentative hope. The plague, it seemed, was finally beginning to release its hold. In the quiet solitude of the herbarium, Brother Alistair nurtured new life. The seeds, coaxed into existence with gentle melodies and diligent care, pushed through the soil, their tender green shoots a vibrant testament to nature's resilience. He no longer sought a miracle cure, but rather found solace in the simple act of fostering growth, a humble participant in the grand symphony of life. Sister Agnes, her heart filled with a quiet determination, meticulously documented Alistair's work. She understood now that the true value lay not in finding a single cure, but in understanding the intricate web of relationships that connected all living things. Her notebook became a repository of knowledge, a testament to the healing power of observation and understanding. Father Thomas knelt in the chapel, his prayers now imbued with a newfound humility. He had witnessed the limits of faith alone, and the quiet strength found in Alistair's unconventional approach. He recognized that true faith embraced both the divine and the earthly, the spiritual and the rational. The surviving monks emerged from the abbey, their faces pale and drawn, but their eyes filled with a quiet resolve. They had stared into the abyss and emerged, scarred but not broken. The world outside seemed brighter, more vibrant, as if awakened from a long, dark slumber. Sister Agnes walked alongside Brother Alistair, her notebook open, ready to capture every detail. He taught her the language of the plants, the subtle signs of health and disease, the secrets whispered on the wind. She realized that true knowledge was not merely the memorization of facts, but the cultivation of a deep and abiding respect for the natural world. Alistair continued to play his melodies, not as a desperate plea for a cure, but as a gesture of gratitude, a celebration of life's enduring beauty. He understood that even in the face of death, nature offered solace and renewal, a promise of hope whispered on the wind. Father Thomas addressed the surviving monks, his voice resonating with a newfound strength. He spoke of the importance of remembering those who had been lost, but also of embracing the future with courage and compassion. He urged them to rebuild the abbey, not just as a place of worship, but as a sanctuary of learning and healing. Sister Agnes, inspired by Alistair's wisdom, dedicated herself to sharing her knowledge with others. She taught the children of the nearby village about the healing power of plants, passing on the legacy of the herbarium, ensuring that its secrets would not be lost. She found joy in nurturing young minds, planting the seeds of curiosity and compassion. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the abbey gardens, Brother Alistair sat in quiet contemplation. He had learned that the true miracle was not the eradication of death, but the enduring power of life, the resilience of nature, and the interconnectedness of all things. He no longer lamented the silence of the plants, but instead listened to the symphony of the natural world, a melody of hope and healing. Father Thomas stood beside Sister Agnes, watching Alistair at work. He had come to understand that true wisdom lay not in adhering blindly to tradition, but in embracing the knowledge that the world offered, in seeking answers both in the sacred texts and in the whispers of the natural world. The abbey, once a place of fear and despair, had become a beacon of hope, a testament to the enduring power of faith and reason working in harmony. Years passed. The Abbey gardens flourished, a vibrant testament to the healing power of nature and the enduring spirit of humanity. The lessons learned during the plague remained, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope can blossom, and that the symphony of life, though sometimes muted, will always play on.